That said, you want to talk about political leadership and you want to talk about somebody who absolutely nails the mood of Victorians who have been told they were running that 3-week marathon, that then got turned into a 9-week marathon, and not even before we get to the end of August, before we start aiming towards September the 13th, this whole thing could get kicked on for another 12 months. Now, even if everything ends on September the 13th, the laws would all be in place that if there was half a dozen cases, as there was in Auckland, everyone would be ordered to go back inside, the economy would be stuffed. Probably the greatest premier of many of our lifetimes in Victoria is Jeff Kennett. He was a bloke who got things done. He had a sensational appearance today with Chris Kenny, who knew what to ask him and knew when to sit back and let it rip. This bloke still speaks on the behalf of Victorians who understand that being free isn't a right, it's an absolute right.
We're going to have to manage this virus. The Premier said today he might keep a state of emergency in place until we have a vaccine. We may never have a vaccine. We don't have a vaccine for SARS. So what's he talking about, for goodness sake? Name one other state that has curfews. Are we all going to be locked up at the whim of the Premier without any checks and balances? This is an act of a megalomaniac.
Well, that's a strong word, but this is the point here, isn't it? That even before...
Well, I don't think, Chris, I don't think I have ever called the Premier a name. I respect his office, and I've always called him Premier or Mr Andrews. But this is absolutely diabolical because of the message it sends out.
What was that Wiggle song, Wake Up Jeff? Well, can we have a new version? Come back, Jeff. Come back, Jeff, and take a role taking on this bloke. Now, you would think that a person who writes for a newspaper that is printed in Melbourne, that is for Victorians, would care about what Jeff Kennett had to say. But no, Smart Alex on Twitter decided to go for this. This was one of the hot takes from the people who work for The Age. Thrice asked question in the newsroom, what is Jeff Kennett wearing? Oh yeah, they really care about the other side of the debate. Independent always. So as we get ready for more restrictions in Victoria for potentially the next 12 months, think about this. There was the 3-week lockdown that then became the super lockdown, which means 9 weeks of these things, curfews in place, where regional Victoria was essentially being treated no different than central Melbourne. Well, as we learn that they're about to get another blank cheque for Dictator Dan, what is the actual situation when it comes to the virus in regional Victoria? You would think that perhaps somebody who writes for a newspaper would be more interested in that story rather than the fashion critique of the former Premier. But here we go. 79 council areas in Victoria, write this down. 51 have 30 or fewer cases. 45, 20 or less. 30 have less than 10 cases. And 22 areas have duck eggs. 0, nothing, none. Yet they should, of course, today be freed from many of the restrictions that they have. Should you be able to go and lick each other on the face? Probably not. Should you socially distance? Yes. Should you have to wash your hands? Absolutely. Should you have to have the app? Yes. But in a place where hundreds of thousands of people live in an area with no cases whatsoever, the idea that the state government is about to get another blank cheque, one that was used in Auckland, and I repeat it for you 3 times. Half a dozen cases led to Auckland being locked down and is still locked down. 1.6 million people, half a dozen cases. Sutton yesterday says if we can get it to 50, that'll be okay. Andrews says today we need to make sure that we have the option of locking down for the next 12 months. And I repeat, remember what these restrictions are about. Remember what they are defined as. Among the powers are for health officials to detain people, search their premises without a warrant, or force people or areas into lockdown. That's the blank cheque that Andrews wants. It's the one that most likely a piss-weak upper house will probably give him. But what was Jeff Kennett wearing today?